watch a scary movie. I, of course, am T, and we're talking scary movies. Yes, yes, yes. You have joined us for another new episode. And really quickly, I want to take this time to remind you, if you want to get alerts on when the new episodes go up, which is every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, then go to this link right here. And at this link, you'll get all you need to know when new episodes are going up and any other videos that I might choose to upload at times as well too. And in addition to that, if you subscribe to the link right here, this is the link to the Facebook group page for T Watches a Scary Movie. That's where you can find all of the scary watch parties we're doing and a lot of the fun other horror shit that I see around the webs that I'd like to let y'all know about as well too. Now, as I said, today is an episode of T and Friends Watch a Scary Movie. So, we're going to get to the first part of my interview with the host of Nia Has Questionable Taste, Miss Nia Travers here, in just a moment. But remember, folks, after episode 1, we have our watch party tonight. We are going to be watching the 1999 The Mummy. Yes, the Brendan Fraser version of The Mummy. If you need to find the link to where to watch that at with us, go to the Facebook page. That's where we're going right after this episode is done. This is part 1 of a 2-part series with Nia. So, without further ado, enjoy. All right, welcome back to T and Friends Watch a Scary Movie. Joining us today is one of my good friends. I've known her for years. We have worked the Denver Pop Culture Con, formerly Denver Comic Con circuit together the last however many years in the Artist Valley section. She is the host of Nia Has Questionable Taste, one of my favorite podcasts out there that came to my attention because she specifically mentioned the movie Deep Rising, which is one of my absolute all-time favorite films. And part of what we're discussing here on this episode today, folks, please welcome Miss Nia Travers. Nia, how's it going today?
It's going good. It's going good. It's beautiful. It snowed.
Yeah.
It's a little bit past my wake up time.
we were discussing between yesterday and today because newsflash, folks, because I love talking about this shit. I don't care about the behind the scenes stuff at all. We did try to record an episode yesterday. We had some really good stuff. And because, it just badness has to happen to me once a week, the episode didn't save. So we're back here recording again. And about them early morning wake up times. I appreciate you doing this so much because, you and me both, late like night owls, like no question.
Yes. Oh man, I was up so late last night. I was actually like making scripts for my podcast, and the next thing I knew, it was 3:30 a.m. in the morning. So.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that you mentioned writing script for your podcast as well too, because I go so far back and forth on it to where it's like, okay, the episodes where I write script, I sound intelligent, and then the episodes where I'm just kind of like freeballing it and everything. Oh man, I sound like a jackass who just rambles on forever. Honestly.
It's just like, yeah, it's just because otherwise I will just talk for hours and hours and hours about one thing, and then I'll listen to it later and I'm like, okay, Neo, we get it. The baby thing was creepy. Shut up.
Which brings us to what I would love to start off with. Nia, like I said, I came across your podcast, number one, because you're a fantastic person, and I'll, any of my friends who put stuff out there, I will happily take a listen or a watch to or anything like that now. But again, you started off with Deep Rising, which is a favorite of both bars, actually.
Yes.
But tell our viewers and listeners at home a little bit about Nia Has Questionable Taste. What is your podcast all about?
So that's a great question. So first, when I was starting it, I was just like, I'm just going to talk about movies that I think are weird and people might not like. But steadily, as it seems to be going on, I seem to be choosing movies that are like, so you have like your blockbuster movies, right? And then you have your movies that for all intensive purposes should have been blockbuster movies and yet somehow like didn't make the cut. Like either they got regulated to like the B movie camp or people just hated them altogether. Like Deep Rising is a great example of that.
It really is.
But I think that they're movies that still are enjoyable. And if you sit down and watch them with like an open mind and realize that like literally they were worked on by maybe like the same production team that worked on like one of your favorite blockbuster movies, or like worked on by your favorite design house, then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, this movie actually might be really cool. Like, it
Mhm.
might be actually really good. Whereas, like, the only thing that might have stopped it from being great was like an actor choice or like a choice of music or something like that, or just timing. Because sometimes movies come out at the same time, like The Avengers does, and then you never hear about them.
So basically, like you're all about like finding those like hidden under the radar gems, basically that either people just trash and they trash unfairly because maybe they didn't even watch it. Because we know that's a thing. Folks hate movies, but they hate them without seeing them. Like,
Yeah.
I recall like 15 years ago, whenever they come out, the Twilight movies. And those are bad movies. Those are really bad movies. I don't enjoy them, but I told myself I can't trash them without actually watching them. So I watched them, and they're bad movies, but I felt good that I actually watched them to actually say they were bad, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. You gotta give the movie some love. Like, I've never met a movie I didn't try to love. And so this is like what that podcast is about. But it's questionable because, the movie might actually just be bad and we might end up just thinking it's bad. Like
At least you're honest, though. So tell me then, all right, because Deep Rising, I'll put it like this. I have not, and granted, there have been a lot of people who have seen it that I know of, but anybody that I've either introduced it to or anybody I know that's actually seen it has not had a bad thing to say about that. But I'm curious. Maybe not even what you've mentioned in your show up to now at this point or anything. Is there a movie or two that you have in your mind that you know for a fact is questionable that you would recommend to people outside of Deep Rising? What's another movie or two that you have questionable taste on that you would recommend to
oh,
people out there?
let me count the movies. Okay, so we gotta go with the ballpark. The ballpark called like the cult classic hit a home run out of the park, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Ah, okay,
That
okay.
movie is so terrible. I once tried to force my significant other to watch it, and then he looked at me and was like, "If you ever make me watch that again, we might break up."
Oh no. Oh no. And it's so interesting. That's a great choice because like that's one of those movies that only got better over time. And I mean
Yes,
that in like a cult classic very kind of way because we're both agreed it's not exactly a good movie, but it's so much fun. And
it is.
it's only gotten more enjoyable over the decades, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that would like who doesn't like the fact that these clowns look creepy and terrifying? Their faces are like melting. They make ridiculous puns. I'll knock your block off, and then literally knock his block off. They turn people into cotton candy and suck their blood out of crazy straws, and they shoot popcorn guns that turn into weird popcorn monster things. I don't even know how to explain it, but
Yes. Uh,
it's great. It's
It's
just
so good. It's so good. And matter of fact, I feel like movies like that, folks are now only getting a chance. They never even heard of it. They get a new introduction to it because I'm actually pretty positive Killer Clowns only got added to Netflix like maybe a couple months ago. Like I'm actually very
yes.
positive that only came on to Netflix just a couple of months or so ago.
It used to be considered so terrible that you would always find it in like the 3.99 Best Buy bargain bin.
Yeah. Oh man. So that is a perfect example of the some of the things you're going to be able to hear on Nia's podcast. Nia Has Questionable Taste. Nia, where can they find your podcast at?
So you can find it on Spotify, Podbean, podcast. I'm trying to get onto the Apple Music library. I still have not figured that one out yet. That's shouldn't be difficult, but it seems to be. And then you can find my Facebook page, Nia Has Questionable Taste on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. Feel free to go there. I always link the podcast episodes there as well to try and make life a little easier and all the different sources that you get it from.
And we will throw those links up on this episode as well, too, folks, so you can find those very easily. So I brought Nia on because I've mentioned Deep Rising a few times, and we both love this film. But then I thought, I always try to get a theme for these for episodes because I always want to find like something that'll like mesh together really, really well. And I started thinking, all right, well, I recently accidentally, like in sometime in the last month, I accidentally ended up watching Van Helsing again. And I'm not a fan of that movie, but it was the first time that I've seen it in at least 15 years. Because like when there's a movie I don't like, I'll give it one more shot. But then after that, it's like, yeah, not happening again if I can help it. And I was like, you know what? We always need a third. So why don't we just make the Mummy the control to this? And we're going to talk about the works of Stephen Sommers. So that's what we're going to go into here, folks, is that we're going to discuss Deep Rising, the Mummy, and Van Helsing, the horror works of Stephen Sommers, the director and writer, and kind of see what we got going for that. So, Nia, tell me about your experiences seeing these three movies for the first time. What do you remember about each of these movies, seeing them individually for the first time?
So Deep Rising, I don't know who I saw it with because the only person I could have saw it with at the time was like, I did not take you to see that movie. That's a hard R for me. No, he would not have seen that movie. But what stuck with me the first time was the scene at the very, very beginning of the movie where like the little Asian girl is running away. You don't know what she's running away from, and everybody is screaming. And then she goes out on a toilet.
Yeah.
I was so young that kind of like toilets slightly, I had like a slight phobia of toilets going forward. I was like, I don't.
If you have not seen the movie, what Nia is referencing is there's a scene once the monster starts attacking the boat, which, like she said, we don't actually get to see the monster until later, which is so cool. That I love that they eviscerate everybody or almost everybody on this cruise ship, and we still don't actually see the monster yet. We know it's a monster because it's not a serial killer pulling people down through toilets, but if you haven't seen it, yeah, this woman decides she's going to run off into the bathroom and hide there. And then that unfortunately doesn't end too well for her as she gets pulled through the toilet to her death.
Yeah.
Oh, so striking.
It was so stressful. So stressful. I was like, I don't get it. And then I would just like, I think it was like 12 maybe. I can't remember what year that movie came out. But then I would just like, the toilet, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know about this, man. Like, it was weird. Child's brains. That's how they work. The Mummy was really great because George of the Jungle had just come out. And so like Brendan Fraser was so dreamy in that movie. And then he comes out in The Mummy. And I just remember seeing it in theater and I was like, oh, he's so cute. Like, he's so beautiful. I think I was like 14 or something. And I was like, he's so good looking. He's so handsome. Oh my God, people are getting their flesh eaten off by gigantic scarab beetles. Not gigantic, but like they're big. They're like this big. These freaking beetles.
Huge.
And they're eating people's flesh off. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know whether to be like, everybody is highly attractive in this movie or to be like terrified for my life because he just ate this person and turned him into a mummy. And then Van Helsing.
Yeah.
I liked Van Helsing at first, but that movie has not aged well. Like for me, my mind or visually, like worse the like storyline wise, like, oh.
Yeah.
I watched it again last night to see if maybe I was just like trashing it unfairly in my mind. Cause I try to love movies.
Give it a chance. Yeah.
So it was still bad. It was still so bad. And so I remember watching it and I was like, these are the greatest graphics ever when it came out. And then as an adult, I'm like, this movie has not aged well. It's sad.
And it's so interesting the way all three of these movies, like you're talking about your first experiences with them, because I've mentioned it. I mentioned it to you yesterday when we were talking about it, that, you know, I didn't see Deep Rising from the beginning the first time I did. You know, I saw it maybe, honestly, probably around where you're talking about, where the woman gets sucked down into the toilet. So I didn't see the setup with the mercenaries and anything like that. They were already on this ship when I saw the film, and going just off of that, I forced my parents to rent it. And, you know, I talked about how I saw The Mummy at the drive-in theater for the first time. And Van Helsing, did you see Van Helsing in theaters?
I did, okay. But that was just like, it was very much like I hate to say it, kids don't do this. That was like when it was really popular to like buy a movie ticket and you go to one movie.
Yep.
And then you would like wait and that movie would end and you'd like go to the bathroom that's in the hall of the movie theater and then you'd like do.
Oh man. I absolutely suggest that because that's how I saw so many R-rated films back in the day. Oh man, that is such a fun experience. These days, I feel it's probably pretty hard to actually get away with it, just because we don't do midnight showings anymore and stuff because everything that happened here in Aurora, and there's way more security at films now. It seems. Now,
Yeah.
granted, I actually can't remember, and not because of COVID, but I actually can't remember the last time I remember having people post up outside of a theater, like checking. Do you remember that in high school and stuff, to where if you went to a movie theater, they used to have ushers posted outside of R-rated films, making sure you either had a ticket or were 18. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I did. That's why you had to miss the beginning. That's why you had to
Yeah.
wait. You had to wait that 15 minutes for the guard dog to leave. So you always miss the beginning of movies. Well,
Yeah.
you got to see the movie. So
You did. You definitely did. Oh man, that's so awesome. And what's so interesting, after talking about these first experiences, is that the late 90s, the early 2000s, we've talked about it, but Universal basically got famous. Like, one of the reasons why they got so big was because they made these monster movies. And back in the day, we had black and white, we had Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and so on. And every couple of decades, they remake those films. They were always
Yes.
There was either sequels or there were remakes coming out all the time. And what a lot of people never really understood is that some of our famous adaptations of these films are Universal monster movies. So like Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's a Universal monster movie. The freaking American Werewolf in London, Universal monster movie. And then there's random offshoots that are actually part of that as well too, like Jack Nicholson's Wolf. That's a Universal monster movie. Hollow Man, that is the Invisible Man. That's
Oh my God, that
Universal
movie.
monster movie. And The Mummy and Van Helsing are both Universal monster movies, because The Mummy is straight up The Mummy, and Van Helsing is basically trying to do like almost like the Avengers. It's almost like the MCU or the the DCU, to where it's like, okay, we're gonna make this big team up movie basically, but it's now a team up of all the villains, and then we're gonna make sequels that'll hopefully look at more villains and stuff like that. And it's so interesting to consider that this is actually one of the earliest shared universes that we ever had. All these movies, none of them connect, but it's interesting to think of it like that this is one of the earliest examples of that.
Yeah. Because otherwise, other than Monster Squad, which was very much a camp movie,
Yeah.
this was really, Van Helsing was really the next movie that I can remember where you had the Wolfman show up.
Mm-hmm.
They made an allusion to Dr. Jekyll and Hyde in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You had Igor, you actually had Victor Frankenstein, and then you had Frankenstein's monster, and you had Dracula and the Brides of Dracula. I think the only person who didn't make an appearance was the Mummy.
That's it. Yeah. Man, which, talking about that one there, you had pointed out to me, because I totally spaced it when we were talking about it the other day, but the fact that some of the nods, because all these adaptations, either the stories are very loosely the same, so it's just like an updated version of the same story, but you actually had reminded me that one of the biggest connections in The Mummy is that Ardif Bey, as played by Odea Fair, that was actually the name of the Mummy in the original film.
Yeah, it was a really nice nod back to that. I think it's Boris. Was it Boris Karloff?
I never looked it up, and we never decided, honestly, Boris Karloff or if it was Lon Chaney, honestly.
I know, but it's a nice nod. It's a nice nod back to that, because that's that was his Human Day counterpart, and then they were like, well, we don't really have a Human Day counterpart, so here we're gonna make it this guy whose whole job is to guard Hymenoptera.
Yes.
From outside forces. This guy, he's Ardif Bey. Go. I really liked that. I thought that was good. I also liked the fact that just I don't know, there's a lot of great nods in that movie to old time, I don't know, the old time feel of classic Hollywood movies. You very much have this character who is the normal character, and then he goes on the quest and he gets pulled into the magical mystical world as he goes forth, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which seems like a great nod. I don't know, I love The Mummy. It's one of my top 20.
Let's talk about the stories of these a little bit here. Deep Rising is the story of it's a team basically. I guess they're not really mercenaries; they're just like hands for hire. But a team that basically rents out their ship for whatever the need is. They don't care what it is. As you pointed out, the slogan is "The cash is there, we do not care."
Yep.
And a team of mercenaries hires them to take them to a cruise ship, which, as we've mentioned, has been attacked by this monster that we're not aware of yet in the story. And we soon learn that these mercenaries were hired to basically destroy the ship. They're hired to rob it, take all the money for it, to where the owner of the ship is going to collect the insurance money. But they find out, unfortunately, that plan's going to go to shit because a giant monster has attacked this cruise ship and killed most of the inhabitants.
Yes. And a smart monster, nonetheless. Like, it's not like a dumb monster who's just like running around, accidentally getting some kills in while people aren't expecting it. Like, no, it's like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. It's laying traps, it's hurting people,
Yeah.
it's separating people from their group. It knows how to get into tiny little secret areas. It's smart, which is what's even more terrifying about it, because halfway during the movie, they realize that they've been getting herded towards a specific area on the ship. And that part leads to like what I still view as one of the best monster unveilings I've ever seen. Because it's like you've gone an hour in this movie without seeing the monster, building up the terror. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, it's deliberately moving us towards the hull of the ship. What's in the hull of the ship? Why is it taking us there? And then that's when the monster shows up.
Yeah.
And even that.
What's so awesome about that too, which, I didn't realize it until like the last few years watching it again. And I mean, it's very apparent after you watch it once. But it's kind of ingenious actually, is that they pretty much spend the bulk of the movie not actually like, we don't see the monster. We're not encountering the full monster itself. It's just its fucking tentacles or appendages or whatever. And to me, that makes it more scary. The fact that this monster successfully navigates this entire ship, killing everybody, including the majority of our main cast, with its tentacles without ever actually seeing the full monster, its head, whatever, throughout the majority of the film. That is just craziness to me.
Yeah, that's why they're under the impression that it is the monster, like the guy who likes to pretend he's all smart, like the guy who dismantled the ship, the one who owns it. Do you notice he's the only one who makes a claim as to what the monster is, and everybody just looks at him like, do we really have time to be like speciating this fucking monster right now? It's just trying to kill us. Like, let's just focus on surviving.
Yeah.
And even that, he's not right.
Yeah. And then like you think about like, so we go from something like that to where it's basically not necessarily a mystery, but it's being hidden for most of the film. And then we shift to like The Mummy, to where we start off Rick O'Connell and Benny, they're fighting this war. And I forget what, you'll have to forgive me, I love that movie, but I don't even remember what the whole point of like the battle at the very beginning of the movie was about. But Benny and O'Connell are fighting in this war, they're getting their asses whooped in it, and then they stumble upon, basically there's all this like kind of like magic and like mystery happening at Hamunaptra, and Rick O'Connell ends up in jail, and the story goes into Evelyn and her brother it's Jonathan, right? Yeah, it's Jonathan.
Yeah, it's Jonathan.
Evelyn and her brother Jonathan are trying to find out the secrets of Hamunaptra and the treasure and all that stuff, because Jonathan's found like a key that allows them access. And they find O'Connell, who they're going to hire as a guide to take them and basically excavate all these riches and treasures from the lost city of Hamunaptra. But unfortunately, along with that, there is a curse that if you open this book of the dead, that you'll raise you'll raise Imhotep, who was a high priest, right?
He's a high priest. Yeah, he's the high priest / advisor to the king. And he severed the curse of Amundai, I think is what it is.
Yes.
And so like, if they speak from the book of the dead, it'll raise him from the dead, and it will bring with it the 7 plagues that were visited on Egypt and he will be forced to like consume the life force of whoever was there when it was opened, and it was great.
Yeah, and such an easy plot because I'll be honest. I've watched the original Mummy probably 3 times at this point, and I want to say the only thing I can remember about the plot being is just that Ardith Bey basically wanted to resurrect his girl. That was the
Yeah.
plot of the original Mummy, but I don't remember whether he had plans for world domination or anything like that. Now, honestly,
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's still the same here. Like, Imhotep definitely wants to like resurrect the love of his life in Naksanumun, because like the whole beginning is like, the we're not gonna touch each other, but then I'm gonna kiss you. I'm gonna quickly forget my resolve and just like
yep.
smear your
Oh,
pate. It's
I'm
done.
screwed.
And then
Oh man.
we're gonna have to kill the pharaoh.
That
But
was
yeah,
oh man, what an impatient move. That's just like he wasn't even thinking about it at that point. Like, yo, we kissed, your dude's coming in here right now. I guess we gotta kill him. That's the only option we got right now.
I feel like they were planning that, right? Like they were like, it's done. Like
That's it.
we're,
Gotta kill
we're
him now.
there
That was
was like
base.
there was backstory we missed in that movie. Like
Yep.
there was like a part where they sat down and they had a plan, and
Oh man.
they were
Which
like,
they
we're gonna
do.
have him.
They do expand on that, I guess, in The Mummy Returns, because you're right. I mean, based on what we learn in The Mummy, it's just that he was in love with this girl. The pharaoh was obviously in the way, so it's kind of still like it's like what do you call it, like a gothic romance almost, because technically we should still feel kind of bad for Imhotep, like it's true love, and who wants to be married to the pharaoh anyway, right?
It's like Romeo and Juliet,
Yeah,
but
but
without
like you
dead creatures.
said, yeah, we hit The Mummy Returns, and then it's like, no, they actually were plotting to kill this dude for a good minute now. Like
Yeah,
they like sure they were in love, but let's not ignore the fact that they're not actually good people. They actually were plotting this for a little bit now.
they were
So
very, very, very bad people who did a very, very bad thing, and then they were like, but the love is why we did it. Like,
and so then we talk about Van Helsing, which is very mummy light, obviously. There's no mummy in it, but
nope.
Van Helsing works for it's the church or some kind of order basically that's responsible for stopping all these supernatural like beings and stuff like that in the world. And we find out that Count Dracula, along with his brides, is trying to raise an army. This army happens to consist of his and the bride's children, of course.
Yep.
And to raise that army, Count Dracula needs the assistance of the Wolfman and technically Victor Frankenstein as well, through the use of Frankenstein's monster. And
Yep.
it's up to Van Helsing to stop Count Dracula from succeeding to raise his undead army.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been thinking about this movie because I watched it and I felt, because obviously we recorded this podcast and we kind of bashed it a little bit in the other one. And so I was like, man, I feel kind of bad. It's like when you're mean to somebody and you're like, I feel kind of bad that I was mean to you. Maybe I should give you another shot. So I tried to watch it last night. And like, I just don't get it. Like, it's Stephen Sommers. It's like a standard Stephen Sommers film. There's like corny dialogue. There's like funny characters. He goes like big and bold with his visual shots. And yet it's somehow like missing that magic. That thing that like takes it from being just like I wrote this note last night while I was watching it because I forgot that the beginning of that movie starts out in pure black and white.
Yes, it does too. Because this is when he's still experimenting with the doctor and everything, right? And he's killing
Yeah.
Dr. Frankenstein. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's right. That's
the
right.
movie actually looked so much better in black and white that I was just struck by it. And I was like, would this entire movie have been like aged much better if the entire thing had been in black and white?
I actually, you know what? That is a very, very good point because I we both didn't enjoy the movie, but to be honest, I'm a sucker for aesthetic like that sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
I compare it to like Logan and Mad Max Fury Road. They did black and white releases of those. I was like, damn, this actually added to like really the whole aesthetic of the film and actually improved upon the feeling of it, which already two phenomenal films, but you're absolutely right. Like there was a lot of promise in that opening segment in black and white, and that if that is not a direct link to the universe, like the classic Universal monster movies, there, I don't know what is. Like that's 100% Stephen Sommers saying, you know, we're invoking these old films, and I agree with you. I've never thought about that. That film, as bad as it is, likely actually would have been even 10% better if it was entirely in black and white.
And they did some special effects in that first, like there's the scene where the lightning flashes and Dracula's face transforms from the man to the creature and then back to his face again, like man, vampire, man. And it just looked better. It did not look as cheesy in the black and white. Like there was something like oddly like, oh, is it a trick of the shadow? Because everything's kind of shadowed right now. And then what was really cool is like when they were like they're standing over Frankenstein's monster, and Victor Frankenstein is wearing his white lab coat, and Dracula's like all in black. And it was really cool visually because it was like they're arguing over the dichotomy of good and evil. Like Frankenstein is like,
perfect.
we can't use him for your plan, and Dracula's like, but we're going to. And so I was like, that's like a really cool visual nod to like the two forces fighting over Frankenstein. But
I didn't even think of that. Is Nia, that's perfect. That's actually incredibly perfect, honestly.
Yeah, so I just think they should release it in black and white. They should do like a black and white re-release, or maybe if you turn your TV screen to black and white mode and watch it that way.
That could be good. You know what? Now I got to track down Stephen Sommers' personal information, because we're getting all these director cuts and like Snyder cuts and shit like that these days. We got to try to get like a Sommers cut of Van Helsing, honestly. I'd be down for that. Oh, come on. Yeah.
So okay, that was just my thoughts last night.
All right. So I want to talk about the scares in these three films. All right. Now, I get it that Van Helsing is very light because it's not really, it's more of an action film, an action adventure film with like some horror elements. But the scares across these three films, you know, especially Deep Rising and The Mummy. Talk to me a little bit about what you can remember, because obviously, you know, this we're 20 years after the fact. Actually, we're probably like closer to 25 years after the fact.
Yeah.
God, we're old. But talk to me back then when you watched like Deep Rising and The Mummy, some of the things in there that you can remember kind of getting freaked out by, maybe unsettled you a little bit. Like, were there actual moments in these films that did that to you, or was it more so you just had fun with it, but you weren't really getting any kind of chills or thrills from it?
No, both of those movies like terrified me because I was definitely like middle school age when those movies came out, and I was probably a little too young to watch Deep Rising when I did, but I did it anyway because I don't know. If you're an only child and you're at home with your mother's extensive movie collection, like a lot of the time, you watch some things.
Yep.
You watch some things.
Yep.
But what was so scary about that movie was there's this scene where they're running away. And it's like your first reveal of the monster, and it's not even the monster. It's just his body. Like I can't bend my oat, but his body pops down behind this guy, and he's like, "What's behind me? What's behind me?"
Oh,
and
yeah.
He turns around,
yeah,
and he shoots the hell out of this thing, and he's shooting it, and it like rips open, and this dude pops out.
Yes.
And it's this squishy skeleton with like, it like harkens back to like Anaconda when like Anthony Hopkins pops out and like wings it like Jennifer Lopez.
Oh man,
that terrifying. And like he's half digested.
Yes.
He's like looking at his skeleton hand.
Oh, good. Yes. So good. So good. Oh, and I think that was the right idea too, because if you think about it, you know, Deep Rising, it's hard because maybe it's like the atmosphere isn't exactly set to be scared as much as it is to be like unnerved and grossed out, because it really isn't necessarily a scary movie, honestly. Like, yeah, it's a horror film, but like it's not necessarily there to really scare you. Like there's no we got you or anything like that.
Right.
But like you said, they do scenes like that to where Billy, that's the character's name. Yeah.
Yes.
Like dude turns behind him, shoots him, dude spits the monster spits Billy out, and it's like, Jesus Christ, that is disgusting, man. He's in
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah, I think there's like a definitely like an area of horror where it's like not necessarily body horror, but like squeamish, queasy horror where you're
Yeah.
sitting there I feel it, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Like in not a good
Oh.
way. I'm gonna throw up.
Mm,
So
so good.
that was like one of my favorite scary parts of that movie. And then the mummy, one of my favorite scary parts. This is gonna sound so bad because
Uh-oh.
okay, so they come back from like they have the Americans, they're all in the hotel room, right? And they're like some shit's going down. The water turns to blood, right? And they
Yep.
run upstairs where they put Evie for her own good. And for some reason, they decided that it was a good idea to have one of the Americans watching her. And
So
there's
dumb.
this scene where like Imhotep comes in as sand through the window and like eats the guy, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes into he like freaking is sand and he pours himself through the keyhole
Yep.
into Evie's locked room while she's sleeping. And I'm just like, oh God, our girl Evie's gonna die. She's gonna die. And he like walks over to her and like half his face is like normal and half his face is like not normal. And he kisses her and his face dissolves on the one side while he's kissing her.
Yeah.
And for me, like, oh, that hits him. That hits him. That hits him like some rapey vibes.
Yeah.
One,
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
She did not consent to this. And two, like, oh, he's still part mummy and he's kissing her.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And the Mummy is such an interesting film beyond the fact that it's a fucking fantastic film. Like I
yes.
honestly feel that if anybody can stand there and say they do not like the 1999 Mummy, that you're an asshole. You're actually an asshole if you don't like that film.
It's so good.
But what's so interesting about it is that they traverse so many genres in it so fluidly and easily, because when it's an action film, my God, it is such a fun action movie. Like those chase scenes in there, like especially the one where they're all in the car and they're trying to escape, like, and everybody's jumping on the car, they're throwing people off and stuff. Like, God, that is such a fun scene.
The plague and boils victims.
Yeah. Oh. But then, like, when I think about the horror, because they do the action and adventure stuff fantastically. When I think about the horror, they do such a good job setting those scenes and like the feelings and just the tension in it. Because like I think about, after Imhotep gets first released and they're still in the damn in the tomb, and the one guy with the glasses, Imhotep attacks him and takes his shit, and that's only the first time he attacks the dude, and they set that shit up so badly. And then, like you said, the scene where like they're all drinking at the bar, and then it all turns to blood. Again, there's like I'm a sucker for sound in horror movies, and there's the part, they're all drinking, everybody spits their drink out, and then they're like, it tastes like, and everyone's quiet. And then O'Connell says blood, and you just hear the one shot glass just drop and break on the floor. And it's like, that gave me fucking chills right there, man.
So good. And even when they're in the city of Hamunaptra and they are like, there is some jump scares in that movie because they're like sitting in there in Hamunaptra. They're underneath the foot of the, is it the god of Anubis or Set?
I think so.
Yeah. So they're underneath this statue and they're like they're basically talking shit about the Americans who stole their dig site, and they're like, and they're like talking all this crap, and like O'Connell, who is an American, keeps having to say none taken, like because they keep going no offense, and he's like none taken, and he's sitting down there playing like
golf or something, right?
Yeah.
All right, folks, and that's gonna do it for part one of our interview with the host of Nia Has Questionable Taste, Nia, as a part of Tea and Friends Watch a Scary Movie. We will be back next Wednesday with the second and final part of our focus on the film works of Mr. Stephen Sommers, where we're talking The Mummy, Deep Rising, and Van Helsing. So make sure you are back next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to see the second part of this great interview. And of course, check out our other videos that we have, including my interview with David Steinman, the writer and director of the horror classic Santa Slay, starring WWE superstar Bill Goldberg. And of course, Also, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube page, because if you're subscribed there, you're going to get all the alerts of when new episodes are coming up. That does it for us, though, folks. We will see you back here 8:30 p.m. next Wednesday. I'm T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.